I'm really excited about our series. We've been doing a series called More Rooms. And we've been looking at this idea of what's the heart of giving. And, what's up with us always wanting more rooms and more shiny things? I've been doing this series for a month and really praying to God on it. And then me and Kim were at Grand Central and I looked at like 20 shiny things in one shop. I was just staring out the window and I was like, I could have that. Ooh, I could do cool stuff with that. Oh, that looks better than the phone I have now. Oh, I could maybe... I didn't get anything, luckily, because Kim came and said, come on, Matt, let's keep going. But what's up with that? We're looking at that. We're looking at what it means to give. And this week, I'm really excited because we're going to look at ending our pursuit of more rooms. And I think this comes by understanding the most powerful way we can give. Because I think sometimes, I know whenever I heard giving talked about in churches when I was first a Christian, I just thought, oh, they just want my money. Like, come on, just be quiet already. So I think giving's a lot more than money. There's something more powerful to give than money. I can speak from experience with that because I had a dad who loved to give money when he got mad at me. So he'd get mad at me, we'd have a fight. I'd wake up the next morning with $20 by my bed. And, being in high school, $20, yes, put some gas in the car. I'm going to go eat lunch with my friends after school, winning. But I can honestly tell you what meant more to me than anything else was a heartfelt letter my dad sent me about, 2 years ago? Or no, this year, around my birthday, and a birthday present. I'd take that over all the $20. All the chats we've had on the phone now, I'll take that. So there's something more powerful than money. And I want to dive into that a bit. And to do that, we're going to look at a story about a sycamore tree at the entrance of Jericho and a little man named Zacchaeus. And I'm not being rude by calling him little man. It's even in our scripture. It says he was, short in stature. I think it tries to be more politically correct about calling him short. But he was vertically challenged like myself. But I think this story can show us a lot. And it can really show us something about giving, which I think is surprising. If we sit with it long enough, we realize something about giving. We realize the most powerful thing we can give. And it's something Jesus does over and over again in his ministry. And just to give you guys a little bit of a background, I don't think it's any mistake that it mentioned a sycamore tree. It could have just said tree, but it said sycamore tree. And there's symbolism in that. So sycamore trees, if you didn't know, could be relied upon for fruit and wood. It's really good in, Jewish culture back then to know you could have some fruit from a tree and you could have wood to keep a fire warm and to do your cooking. They could be relied upon for that, making them a symbol of strength and protection. A little bit how now Trevor pointed it out, we have the symbolism with when we come to communion. We're not literally eating Jesus' body. We're eating bread that symbolizes his body broken. We're not literally drinking his blood. We're not vampires. We're drinking juice that symbolizes his blood that he shed. So sycamore trees were a bit like that. There was some symbolism with them. And we need to know that before we look at the story. We also need to know that Jericho was under Roman control, which meant daily crucifixions. Now, there's historical evidence with, how much they would have crucified people, but we can safely say there was probably every day there was someone on a cross. If they were still alive, they were left there for a bit as a symbol. That's how Rome operate. They wanted to show you, look, this is what happens if you come against us. You end up there. You better watch it. And they were really smart, too, because they thought, all right, where are we going to put all these crucifixions? You want to put them somewhere people can see. So do you put them in the city center? Where do you put them? They put them at the entrance. So anyone leaving and anyone coming in had to walk past it. And I think that's important to know because it gives us a different angle when we read this story. And we need to know these two things because I don't think it's a coincidence that the sycamore tree is mentioned. And I don't think it's any coincidence that this whole encounter happens at an entrance to Jericho. And we need to understand some of the context before we dive in. But now that we got a little bit of an idea, I want to dive into this story. And it's going to come up behind me, but we're going to start off with just reading verses 1 to 3 in chapter Luke 19. And I'm reading from the ESV version, but this is what it says. He entered Jericho and was passing through. And behold, there was a man named Zacchaeus. He was a chief tax collector and was rich. And he was seeking to see who Jesus was. But on account of the crowd, he could not, because he was small in stature. Such a nice way to call someone short, right? Small in stature. But I think we read that and we can keep skimming over and we can get an idea of maybe there's just this big crowd and Zacchaeus is just at the back and he can't see. You know, that's what's going on. But I think we got to realize this crowd was kind of like, no way. Zacchaeus wasn't going to see this moment. They weren't going to let that happen. Why would you? He's the chief tax collector. He's gotten rich by ripping you off. Your family's gone without food while he's had abundance. So I think you have this crowd like, no way, we're not letting him in. So I kind of get this image. He might have been trying to sneak in, but I think he would have got pushed some and had some people, you know, maybe there was a little gap, someone trying to peek through and they saw who it was, so they step a bit closer to, you know, close up the gap. I think you have all of this happening. So what does a short person do in this moment? If you're short, you probably know the answer. But if you're not short, you probably don't because you never had to do it. But let's read. And this is what we read in verse 4. So he ran on ahead and climbed up into a sycamore tree to see him, for he was about to pass that way. And like I said earlier, we got to remember, it's not a coincidence that it says sycamore tree. It could have just put tree. The writer of this gospel is wanting us to pick up on that. Because a sycamore tree equals strength and protection. And where is Zacchaeus coming from? He's a chief tax collector. He's got so much protection because the Romans don't want anything to happen to their tax man. You know, he's paying the bills for him. He's not physically strong, but he's got a lot of strength if you think of his position. What he can do to people, the money that he has, the things that he can get. So I don't think it's a coincidence that this short man went up a sycamore tree, which is a symbol of strength and protection. And I think it's important that we note those little things. But let's keep reading to see what happens. So Jesus is kind of making his way. He's coming past. Zacchaeus couldn't get through the crowd. So being a short man, he's like, I'll climb a tree, which I just think, I try to imagine someone climbing a tree in sandals with a robe on, and it makes me laugh a little bit. But if you want to imagine that as well and get a chuckle, feel free. But it's interesting. But let's see what happens. What does Jesus do in this moment? And this is what we read in verses 5 to 6. And when Jesus came to the place, he looked up and said to him, Zacchaeus, hurry and come down, for I must stay at your house today. So he hurried and came down and received him joyfully. I don't know why, but that encounter always surprises me. Zacchaeus, Jesus looks up and knows him by name, which if he knows him by name, he probably knows why he's up there. He probably knows all the dodgy things he's done to get extra money. But he calls him out. Jesus takes time to notice. Because it wasn't just like Jesus walking by and there's one tree with a little short man in it. There's a great big crowd around Jesus. There's lots happening. I don't know about anyone else, but have you ever been in a crowd? Put your hand up if you've been in a crowd. We should have all been, yeah. Hopefully. Does anyone get stressed in the crowd? Yeah, it's scary, right? Lots happening. I kind of think of like Gideon. He's given me new eyes in lots of ways. But one thing with his autism is when crowds happen, he can't like handle it. And you can pick it up. He starts doing stuff like stimming, and you can see it's overwhelming. So I kind of like to imagine that's what's going on in this moment. There's this big crowd trying to hoard around Jesus. He's got enough of a name and a following now. People know about him. People are coming out to see him. Even the tax collector is. And there's all this commotion. And Jesus, in this moment where, Jesus was human when he was here, he could have been feeling overwhelmed like we are in a crowd. He could have been feeling stressed, but he takes time to notice a short man in a tree. And that short man comes down. And he doesn't just take time to notice him there. He says, hurry, I need to stay at your house tonight. Saying, I want to share a meal with you, Zacchaeus. We're going to hang out. And Zacchaeus comes down joyfully. I want to read the next verse in this story, because I think this is one that's interesting as well if we sit with it for a moment. But this is what it says. And when they saw it, they all grumbled. He has gone in to be the guest of a man who is a sinner. So who saw it? Well, it's like the whole crowd, right? The whole crowd sees this happen. And they're like, oh my goodness, what is Jesus doing? He's going to sit with the sinner? How could he? And we can kind of think, oh, those people are judgmental, They need to see the bigger picture. They need to have grace, If I was there, I would have had grace. I would have been like, good on you, Jesus. But I think that's a lie. If I'm honest, I would be like them. Like, mate, you just walked past three of my buddies on a cross. I knew them. They didn't do anything wrong. Maybe one of the reasons there were people crucified is because they didn't pay their taxes, because they didn't have the money, and Zacchaeus was a part of that. And you're going to go have dinner at his house? What are you doing? Like, that's how I would have felt in the moment. I'd love to say I'd be gracious and kind, but I wouldn't. I'd be like, come on, you got your Superman powers. Bust those guys off the cross and let's go beat up these Romans. Like, don't waste time eating with that dirty tax collector. My family hasn't ate in 3 days, but he has abundance. Don't waste it. We would have all responded like that. And I think we need to acknowledge that sometimes when we read these stories, because we don't. We like to read it like, oh, we wouldn't have done that. We're better. But I don't know how true that is sometimes. But I want to keep going on to see what happens after all these people grumble. What happens next in our story? And we can see that in the last little 2 verses, in verses 8 to 10, we read this. And Zacchaeus stood and said to the Lord, behold, Lord, the half of my goods I give to the poor. And if I have defrauded anyone of anything, I restore it fourfold. And Jesus said to him, today salvation has come to this house, since he also is a son of Abraham. For the Son of Man came to seek and to save the lost. The story really shows me that time is the most powerful way we can give. A whole tax collector's life is changed because Jesus spent time with them. Makes me wonder what they talked about while they hung out at his house, but we don't know that part of the story. But Jesus spent time, and it radically changed Zacchaeus' life. And from that, Zacchaeus takes time to reassess his own, what he's been doing. And he's like, hold up, I kind of have been ripping people off. I'm going to pay everyone back. Anyone I've done wrong, I'll pay you back fourfold. That takes time. That's not just a rich man throwing money, because he's going to probably have to get his calculator, and I'm sure, he's got his budget sheets, which I hate budget sheets. I'm not a budget person. I'm like a spend it person. Kim's the budget person. She saves us on that. But he gets his budget sheets. He would have had to go through that. He would have probably had to go and sit with people. Because I'm sure once the town hears that, right, they're all going to go see Zacchaeus. I want my money back. I remember that one time he ripped me off and I couldn't eat for a week. Yeah, I want that money back. They're all going to be going to see him. Zacchaeus is now taking time to give back. Because any way we give involves our time. And I don't think we realize that sometimes. It's a lot of times in one sentence. I should have chose a different word. But we don't. If I give money to something, that's giving my time because I worked hard to earn that money, right? What, you want to sponsor a kid on compassion? That takes time. You have to go pick a child to sponsor. You have to then make sure the money comes out of the right account each week. And the money's there and you're working to earn that money. It all takes time. Time is the most powerful tool that we have to give, not money. And the Christ example shows us this. And we need to look at the Christ example found throughout the Gospels. Because there's so many stories like this one where Jesus gives his time and incredible things happen. And if we want to be real honest, Christ gave his time to the most unexpected individuals, which included tax collectors, like in the story today, sex workers, the marginalized, the outcast, the disfigured, and the dropouts. That's just to name a few. But we don't sit back and think every one of his disciples that he chose was a dropout. They went to school to learn the Torah at a young age, like everyone did in Jewish culture. And then the good ones, hey, you're good enough to be a Pharisee, or, learn a little bit more, keep studying. None of his disciples fit in that category. They were all the dropouts. And Jesus, over and over again, spends time with the people we wouldn't expect. The woman caught in adultery. The woman by the well. There's so many stories over and over again where Jesus is using his time and giving his time. Christ shows us the heart of giving throughout his ministry. And I think this can end our pursuit of more rooms if we can see the power in what we do with our time. Because, like the story I shared at the start with my dad earlier, the $20 by my dresser when he got mad at me, that wasn't really my dad saying sorry. That wasn't my dad taking time. My dad got older, and we all get older, but at one point he did something amazing. He used his time to send me something that still blew me away. I got the most beautiful birthday present I think I've had in years from him. It's shipped over here. All this Saints gear, because I'm a football fanatic back home, so I love my New Orleans Saints. Hopefully they don't do awful without their star quarterback anymore, but we'll see. No one in the room knows what I'm talking about, so I'll keep going. But I love the Saints. He sent me all this stuff. And he sent me this heartfelt letter that I still have to this day. And that time that he took in that completely changed our whole relationship. And I think that shows me, my dad, my whole life, if I wanted or needed anything money-wise, I got it as a kid. I wasn't spoiled, but I didn't go without much. But the most powerful thing my dad did was send me a birthday present and a handwritten letter. Because what we do with our time is valuable. It's easy sometimes to throw money at stuff and people, but I don't think that's the answer. And I really hope you guys have grabbed hold of that. The heart of giving is more than money. And it really comes from knowing what we're going to do with our time. Who am I going to sit with? Who will I spend time with? What am I going to do and invest the time that I got into others? What would we do as a church, if we're honest, if we go back a few slides? There we go. What would we do as a church, if we're honest, if we had, we don't have tax collectors now. Wall Street sharks or something come in here. There you go. Or sex workers come into the church. Or marginalized people come in. Or people who are called outcasts, or people who look different than us. Or people that are school dropouts. Are we going to take time for them as a church? Because I think that's the big question. That's the heart of giving. All giving stems from what we do with our time. So I kind of want to end this whole series of More Rooms by asking a question. Just one for you guys to think about, and even for myself. Are we going to do the same and give in the most powerful way to those within and outside our church community? Because that's the question we need to ask. That's the question Christ asks us over and over again. So what are we going to do? And I just want to close in prayer and leave you guys just with that question to ponder as you, I guess, think about everything we've covered throughout this series, just to, sit with. So I'll just close in prayer. God, I thank you for who you are. I thank you for your love and for your mercy and for your grace. And I thank you so much for the heart of giving that you showed all of us. That you showed us the most powerful way to give is our time. And you gave us your time over and over again. I pray that as a church and as followers of Christ that we'll do the same. That we'll give our time. Realizing that any way that we give, is financial or whatever it is, it all stems from our time. And the time is the most powerful tool we have in giving. And I pray that you help us use it well as a church. For those within our church community and those outside our church community. Help us to honor you with what we do with our time. In your amazing name, amen.